Previously on the DVD shelf.
1, 2, 3, 4.
They do get better.
Do they, though?
Ted? We're dead, dude.
In 1988, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was nothing more than an unfinished film sitting on a shelf for months after its production company went bankrupt. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, it gets a small amount of new financing and becomes a sleeper hit upon its release in February of 1989. Arriving at the tail end of the 80s, the movie was like a spoof of the big-budget sci-fi blockbusters that dominated the decade, mixed with the screwball teen comedies that were a dime a dozen back then. And its surprise success generated no shortage of tie-ins and merchandise.
Wild Stallions rule!
Stars Alex Winter, Keanu Reeves, and George Carlin all lent their voices to the first season of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, a Saturday morning cartoon spin-off that premiered on CBS in the fall of 1990, but was then moved to Fox Kids for its second and final season. By then, the voices of Winter and Reeves were replaced by Evan Richards and Christopher Kennedy, who also infamously portrayed Bill and Ted in a live-action TV series that aired on Fox during the summer of 1992, and, with all due respect, to watch two other actors do lame impersonations of Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves in a low-budget 90s-era TV format is about as cringeworthy as you might imagine. Not surprisingly, only 7 episodes aired.
No way.
Yes way.
Not long after Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure became a hit in 1989, screenwriters Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon went to work on a sequel, even though the idea of writing one didn't excite them very much. Having been those two close college buds who created Bill and Ted with their improv group, and then went on to write the first film basically on a whim, there was now a strain in their friendship as their screenwriting careers were taking off and they were both starting their own families. But Matheson and Solomon knew from the higher-ups that a sequel was inevitable, so they decided that if it was going to happen no matter what, they ought to be the ones to write it themselves. For them, it felt more like an obligation than a joyful experience, like writing the first one. So given their state of mind this time around, the sequel's darker tone is not all that surprising. Regardless, the screenwriters still wanted Bill and Ted to be the same two lovable slackers who took everything in stride, almost as if Bill and Ted's friendship was an idealistic version of their own. Afraid of typecasting, actors Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves also hesitated to return at first, but with Matheson and Solomon on board to once again put words in their mouths, the actors also decided to jump back in the phone booth for another spin, and were now granted more opportunities to give their own input during the screenwriting process. Initially, the sequel saw our heroes now struggling in their English class and having to go on another mission to collect a group of prominent literary characters in order to pass a major book report. Not only was the concept painfully derivative of the first movie, but it was also similar territory to what would be covered on the Saturday morning cartoon series. Matheson and Solomon then came up with another, more bold idea that honestly feels like it all started as a joke. Bill and Ted Go to Hell.
Dude, this is a totally deep hole. Yeah!
It wasn't like stick them back in the phone booth, send them to another part of history, have them have now it's a science report. You know, I'm sure that's what they were getting.
Right.
You know, so no, they were like, let's make a hard left turn. Let's get away from just sort of the immediate time travel stuff.
Evil Bill and Ted robots.
Yeah.
And dead Bill and Ted.
Yeah. And
How
death
fantastic.
himself.
And death.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Probably the single greatest cardinal sin a sequel can commit is redundancy. There's nothing more frustrating about a sequel than the feeling you're watching a beat-for-beat retread of its predecessor. But making a good sequel can be a difficult code to crack. There isn't one all-encompassing formula that gets you an amazing sequel every time. But to put it simply, the best ones tend to continue and expand upon the story, not just repeat it. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was not written with sequels in mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean it didn't leave itself open to one, at least in a joking way like Back to the Future. Bill and Ted Go to Hell, which was later retitled Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, once again opens in the utopian future that was built on Bill and Ted's be excellent to each other philosophy and the music of wild stallions. But now, a militant resistance leader has sent 2 robot decoys back in time to kill Bill and Ted and destroy their reputations before they can become rock legends. Now roaming the afterlife, they must fight death in a game of chance and return to the land of the living to take back what was rightfully theirs. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is such a different experience from the first movie by being darker, weirder, and in some ways funnier. If the first one was this unique mashup of post-Star Wars sci-fi fantasy blockbusters and 80s teen comedies, this one somehow manages to blend The Terminator with Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. And what I've always respected about it as a sequel is how far it goes out of its way to sidestep the dreaded sequelitis. Bill and Ted still feel like the same characters, a little older, not much wiser, but screenwriters Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon did not take the easy way out by completely rehashing the first movie. Instead, they got pretty damn creative while widening the scope, upping the stakes, and taking memorable moments from the first film and turning them on their head.
How's it going, Bill and Ted? Ted, it's us again.
The first film's director, Stephen Herrick, was originally slated to return for Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, but he wasn't crazy about the script and felt it was way more cynical and mean-spirited than the first movie. So what does he go on to direct instead? Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Nothing mean-spirited there. Herrick was replaced by young British director Peter Hewitt, who approached the material in a much more stylish way, giving it a vibrant comic booky color palette and a dark surrealism straight out of a Tim Burton movie. The film also stood out with its stunning animatronics, puppetry, and makeup effects supervised by horror legend Kevin Yeager, best known for his work on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and having designed the original Chucky doll. Yeager's makeups were seen briefly in the first Bill and Ted, but this film is a veritable smorgasbord of his inventive tactile effects, from the unforgettable introduction of the evil Bill and Ted robots to a lovable pair of Martian inventors called Station.
Station!
While in hell, Bill and Ted confront their deepest childhood fears brought to life with Kevin Yeager's creepy creations, be it a very Chucky-like Easter Bunny or Alex Winter playing his own ghoulish grandma. Once the film was completed, a lot of footage ended up on the cutting room floor, but the 1991 Marvel Comics adaptation, which was based on an early draft of the script, left in many of these unseen sequences. Sadly, a lot of this footage only seems to exist in the form of rare photos at this point. Yet had the movie kept it all in, there would have been even more of Kevin Yeager's wonderfully bizarre effects to enjoy, and the movie itself probably would have been a lot stranger than the one we ended up getting. Which is saying something.
Excellent work, dude.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey takes place roughly 3 years after the first film, as the great ones continue to pursue their music careers, with minimal progress. Bill and Ted's fiancées, 2 medieval princesses they met during their last adventure, are also members of the band, but they didn't come up in my review of the first film because they barely had any lines, let alone any real bearing on the plot in general. Their 2 love interests that were so inconsequential, original actresses Diane Franklin and Kimberly Cates, were replaced, and even their character names were accidentally flipped. That being said, the princesses were given very little to do here as well, except for being your typical damsels in distress. We also get caught up with some of the other side characters from the first movie. Bill's young bombshell stepmom Missy, played by Amy Stock, has since divorced his dad and is now married to Ted's, played again by Hal Landon Jr., who gets a fun little scene where, after his son's ghost takes possession of his body, he does his best Keanu Reeves impression.
You totally did it, dude. I totally possessed my dad.
We also meet the sadistic Colonel Oates, played by character actor Chelsea Ross, the proprietor of the Alaskan military school Ted would have been shipped off to had they flunked their big history report.
Welcome to hell.
Lastly, George Carlin returns as Rufus, but he's unfortunately shoved way into the background, which I suppose makes sense since this movie involves very little time travel. However, there is a little twist involving his character towards the movie's finale that's so absolutely absurd, it's kinda great.
Would anyone else have let you in this contest?
No.
Along with all the returning characters, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey adds a whole roster of strange new faces to the franchise. British character actor Joss Ackland plays aggressive resistance leader Chuck Denomalos, who holds a personal grudge against Rufus, his former pupil, and it's been said that Ackland either completely hated doing this film or he was just so dedicated he never broke character.
What a shithead.
He's a menacing antagonist, and it's interesting how the film addresses that even in a seemingly perfect society, radicalized detractors are inevitable. Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves are extremely fun to watch as the killer robot versions of Bill and Ted. They're over-the-top douchebags, but still very much Bill and Ted, as incompetent as they are evil pricks. So much so that their own creator can't even stand them.
I hate them. I hate the robot versions of them.
You made us, dude.
After Bill and Ted are disposed of by the robots, they roam heaven and hell in search of a great mind to build them a pair of good robots who can destroy the evil ones. After passing through the gates of heaven, they find their genius inventor in the form of, what else, a couple of pint-sized Martians called Station.
Did you assume that the most brilliant scientist in the entire universe would be from Earth?
But the absolute scene stealer of this film is William Sadler as the Grim Reaper, who first appears as a stoic, imposing figure right after Bill and Ted are killed, but after they defeat him in a string of board games, he reluctantly befriends them and becomes an unexpectedly hilarious comic foil and fan-favorite character.
I mean, I come from a different background entirely. I mean, it's like, training in the stage and so on. So coming to this, it's been very, energizing. Because you never know which way the scene's going to go. You never know what's going to happen. Shoot the rehearsal because it may never happen again. Die Hard 2 killed maybe 250, 300 people, something like that. And now, death. The Grim Reaper who's killed everybody who ever died. So it seems like a natural progression to me. I'm not sure where you go from here. I may have peaked.
And yet, this wasn't the first time Sadler portrayed death. In the mid-80s, Sadler was a performer on the short-lived British-American sketch comedy series Assaulted Nuts, and in one skit, he appeared as the Grim Reaper, speaking in the same ambiguous Eastern European accent and acting just as self-conscious and insecure as he would go on to be in the movie.
Don't I scare you? Aren't you afraid just a little bit?
Are you kidding with that weirdo makeup?
It is not makeup. I am naturally pale.
In 1994, Sadler donned the black cloak once again for a fun little appearance in a Season 6 episode of Tales from the Crypt, which I'd like to think is now part of Bill and Ted canon.
Of course, I normally prefer to take souls one at a time, but...
Is this guy boring or what? All he ever talks about is himself. I gotta remember that the next time he comes to town and wants to get together.
Let's visit the land of heavy metal with our most excellent cereal.
Pass the gruel!
Looks like a gruel duel, dude. Heinous display of manners. We've got a most excellent way to start your day. Or night. Bill and Ted's excellent cereal. Cinnamon oats with marshmallow notes. It's the most triumphant part of this complete breakfast.
Awesome cereal duels.
Who gets the last bowl?
He does.
New Bill and Ted's excellent cereal. It's most excellent.
Screenwriters Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon look back on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey with some criticisms, and while they appreciate having had the creative freedom to write the film they wanted, they blame the majority of their issues on a highly rushed production schedule. Principal photography began in January of 1991 for an insanely quick July 19th release date.
No way!
It made a profit, but because it had double the budget of the first one and made back slightly less, it wasn't a wild success as far as sequels go. I'm sure a lot of my love for this movie is nostalgic, but I just can't help it. I saw it in theaters at a very young age after watching the first one on video, and its dark humor and creepy visuals have stuck with me ever since. To be more critical, sure, it's not flawless, especially the heavily rewritten and reshot third act, along with the somewhat anticlimactic demise of the evil Bill and Ted robots, but I still love all that stuff too, including the rough homemade look of the good Bill and Ted bots. Plus, this film has a much more satisfying finale than the first, goofy as it may be, where Bill and Ted use a little time travel magic to instantly become the great musicians they were destined to be, as they stand victoriously in front of the entire world and, well, lip sync to a Kiss cover of an old Argent song. Does this mean Wild Stallions is responsible for Lip Sync Battle? And here I thought they were supposed to change the world for the better.
Sorry.
After Bill and Ted, Alex Winter drifted away from acting to further pursue his career behind the camera. In 1993, he co-wrote, co-directed, and starred in the underrated gross-out comedy Freaked, and has since directed a wide variety of music videos, TV shows, short films, and critically acclaimed documentaries. And of course, Keanu Reeves has become a globally recognized action star with hits like Point Break and Speed, and hugely successful franchises like The Matrix and John Wick. But despite all those other iconic roles, deep down, he will always be Ted Theodore Logan.
Whoa!
While Winter and Reeves have remained good friends, so have screenwriting duo and original Bill and Ted, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. And for over a decade, they've been actively working on a third Bill and Ted outing. Matheson and Solomon are obviously very different guys than they were 35 years ago when they first wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and it sure seems like maturing and growing will be the themes explored in this new story about a middle-aged Bill and Ted who haven't quite yet become the rock gods they're supposed to be. But the writers have had a tough time getting this film off the ground because all Hollywood seems interested in is rebooting it with a pair of younger actors.
They're completely brilliant. Not!
Then, after years of speculation and teasing, it was confirmed in May of 2018 that Bill and Ted Face the Music was finally moving forward and reuniting Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves.
We want to say thank you to you, the fans.
We do.
Because it looks like we might,
Actually,
hopefully,
make a movie this summer.
Bill and Ted 3.
Face the Music.
Yes.
And it is all because of you guys, and so we owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Along for the ride is Galaxy Quest director Dean Parasot and filmmaker Steven Soderbergh as an executive producer. The film is reportedly focusing on Bill and Ted's relationship with their daughters, a great way for this franchise to finally include some interesting female characters. Thankfully, William Sadler will also be returning as Death, and it's being said that the film will include some prominent tributes to the late George Carlin. Now, to me, properties like Star Wars The Force Awakens, Creed, Twin Peaks The Return, and Halloween 2018 are among some of the greatest examples within this recent comeback trend because of how they handle the aging of iconic characters and how they fully embrace the emotional baggage that naturally comes with these extended passages of time. And if Bill and Ted Face the Music can offer something similar, I think it'll be a most excellent conclusion to this long open-ended trilogy. The film is slated for release on August 21st, 2020. Wait. 8 plus 21 plus 20 plus 20?
69, dudes!
Holy shit, that's brilliant. And finally, here we have the bodacious 3-disc Blu-ray box set, Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Collection, which was originally released in 2016 by Shout Factory under their Shout Select label and features striking cover art created by illustrator Paul Shipper. Disc 1 presents Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure along with 2 newly recorded feature-length audio commentaries, one with star Alex Winter and producer Scott Kroof, and the other with screenwriters Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. Additionally, we also get the film's original theatrical trailer. Disc 2 contains Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey for the first time ever on Blu-ray, and just like the first disc, there are also 2 new commentary tracks and the trailer. Disc 3 is where you'll find all the additional goodies for both movies, the main course easily being 2 brand new extensive documentaries about the making of each film. Time Flies When You're Having Fun covers Excellent Adventure, and Bill and Ted Go to Hell dives into Bogus Journey, with each doc offering up insightful and honest recollections from select members of the cast and crew, including Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves. The remaining special features originated on previous DVD releases, predominantly the 2005 Excellent Collection DVD box set. The Most Triumphant Making of documentary explores the making of both films and features many interviewees, including directors Stephen Herrick and Peter Hewitt, neither of whom appeared in the more recently produced documentaries. The original Bill and Ted is a fun conversational piece where screenwriters Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon candidly discuss their college days where they first created the characters of Bill and Ted. Score, an interview with guitarist Steve Vai, spotlights the Grammy-winning musician and former Frank Zappa collaborator who contributed several electric guitar compositions to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, including Bill and Ted's signature air guitar licks.
Excellent!
The Hysterical Personages of Bill and Ted gives brief rundowns on the real-life versions of the historical figures that appear in both films, all while we're presented with rare photos of the cast. Air Guitar Tutorial is a quick glimpse into the competitive world of invisible guitar strumming. Vintage EPK is a brief behind-the-scenes segment from the original electronic press kit for Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And finally, The Linguistic Stylings of Bill and Ted is a quick video glossary that explains the meaning behind some of Bill and Ted's most excellent catchphrases. Additionally, the box set also features reversible cover art on the Blu-ray case, 2 postcard-sized decals, and a Wild Stallions guitar pick.
No way. Yes way, Ted!
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is a true 80s sci-fi comedy classic, and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is a wonderfully dark and strange supernatural follow-up. But I think what has resonated with audiences for the past 3 decades has been the heart and sincerity hiding behind all the goofiness and absurdity. Neither film is perfect, but both are entertaining and wildly different roller coaster rides in their own right. While Part 1 has the tighter script and more cohesive story, Part 2 has the better acting, sharper comedy, and more ambitious visuals. So, I think both Bill and Ted films equally deserve a 4 out of 5 final recommendation. And the same goes for Shout Factory's Most Excellent Blu-ray collection, even though it is unquestionably a must-own for any die-hard fan of Wild Stallions.
Excellent! Yeah!
Over the years, we've continued to see shades of Bill and Ted's slacker personalities and cartoonish hijinks in other iconic duos like Wayne and Garth, Beavis and Butthead, Jay and Silent Bob, or Harold and Kumar. And even though there hasn't been a new Bill and Ted film in over 25 years, they remain unique and beloved characters for a variety of reasons, not the least of which being their inclusive worldview and undying optimism, even when faced with flunking out of high school, or being dead. And hopefully with the 3rd film on its way, we haven't quite seen the last of Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan. May they party on for years to come.
And all we can say is... Let's roll!